Hola, hoy vamos a hablar del presente del subjuntivo. Vamos a aprender qué es y cómo lo usamos. Primero, ustedes necesitan saber algo de los verbos. Vamos a hablar de eso en inglés y español. You need to know that there are three different moods of verbs. We have the indicative, which is a statement of what one believes to be fact. So in the indicativo, you already know el presente, el pretérito, el imperfecto, el presente perfecto, el futuro, and so on and so on. There's the imperative or imperativo, which is for commands. In Spanish, too, you learned how to form informal commands, and this year you've learned how to form formal and plural commands. Now you're learning el subjuntivo, the subjunctive. This year, at the end of Spanish 3, we're going to use it to talk about what one person wants someone else to do. First thing you need to know, of course, is cómo formamos el subjuntivo. And hopefully this sounds fairly familiar to you because, quite simply, the rules are the same as the rules that we used to form the formal and plural commands overall. You start off with the forma yo en el presente, quita la o, get rid of the o, and you're going to add the er, present tense ending. So what you add is o, es, e, hemos, es, and en. Ahora van a escribir el ejemplo en la página 2 del verbo doblar, to turn. Para conjugar el verbo doblar, empezamos con doblo, quitamos la o y vamos a tener doble, dobles, doble, doblemos, dobléis y doblen. Para conjugar los verbos er e ir en el presente del subjuntivo, vamos a empezar con la forma yo en el presente, quitamos la o y vamos a añadir las terminaciones, the endings, de los verbos ar en el presente, más o menos. A, as, a, amos, ais y an. Y ahora van a escribir un ejemplo con el verbo subir. Empezamos con subo, quitamos la o y tenemos suba, 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 subamos, subáis y suban. Y sí, hay otras cosas que tienen que saber. First off, with verbos con cambio de raíz en el presente, they keep their stem change, with the exception of the nosotros and vosotros forms. Therefore, they still look like that nice boot that you've gotten used to seeing when you've used the present tense. Another thing to be aware of is, yes, there are some spelling changes for verbs that end with kar, gar, and zar, but we're not going to be worrying about that right now. Also, there are some verbs that are completely irregular. The information for these verbs that you need to know, because I believe there's one more, is already on las páginas 3 y 12 of the notes. Overall, you're not going to be responsible for verbs with irregular yo forms that aren't the yogos that you already know, or verbs with which you're not already familiar, or verbs with spelling changes. However, these are a few verbs from this unit that have a spelling change due to ending with a QUE or a GER, or have an irregular yo form. Conducir, like reconocer, goes to that ZC in the yo form in the regular present tense, so it affects the conjugation. So, por favor, escriban las conjugaciones en la página 4 de los verbos aparcar, aparque, aparques, aparque, aparquemos, aparques, aparquen, conducir, conduzca, conduzcas, conduzca, conduzcamos, conduzcáis, conduzcan, y coger, coja, cojas, coja, cojamos, cojáis, y cojan. Okay, so now that we have a general idea of how we conjugate verbs in the present subjunctive, where and when the heck do we use this? How and when do we use this? So there are a couple things you need to know. La oración va a tener dos cláusulas. It's going to have two separate parts. You're going to see the word que between the cláusulas, between the clauses. You have two separate parts of the subject, the primary clause, secondary clause. The secondary clause is sometimes called the dependent clause as well. That may be the term with which you're more familiar. Another thing you need to know is that the clauses are going to have different subjects. So once again, the sentence is going to have two clauses. You will see the word que. In this case, the word que means that between the clauses. And they are going to have different subjects. So if you take a quick look, por ejemplo, en la página 5, tenemos la oración, yo quiero que los estudiantes enciendan las luces. I want the students to turn on the lights. I want the students to do something. Es importante que ustedes tengan cuidado con el coche. It's important that you're all careful with the car. It is the subject of the first clause, and ustedes is the subject of the second clause. And finally, ojalá que no haga mucho calor en el salón de clase. I really hope that it's not very hot in the classroom. I really hope is what ojalá means. No haga mucho calor, that it, which is the subject of the second clause, is not very hot in the classroom. Because as we know, in D206, it can get very, very hot. So, how do I remember all these? At Framingham High School, we typically use the expression weirdo, and it got a little oddly off-center here, to help you remember certain verbs and expressions that can trigger the subjunctive. And you're going to get into this a lot more next year. But what you need to know now is that, first off, W stands for wants and wishes, E stands for emotions, I for impersonal expressions, R is for recommendations, D is for doubts, and O is for ojalá, which means I really, 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 really hope. For now, you are going to focus on wants. So for example, what someone wants another person to do. So we could say, ustedes quieren que la señora no les dé más apuntes. You want señora not to give you more notes. You want señora to do something, or in this case, not to do something. You also need to know the impersonal expressions. The impersonal expressions are always going to be translated as it is blank that, it is good that, it is bad that, it is interesting that, it's necessary that, it's important that, and you have a lot of them as part of your vocab on your last vocabulary sheet for the coche en carretera. We have here, por ejemplo, es necesario que tú prestes atención. It's necessary that you pay attention. And finally, we have ojalá, which is, as I said, I really, 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 really hope. It actually comes from the Arabic o Allah, so it does have that origin. So we have ojalá que ustedes conduzcan con cuidado. I really hope that you all drive carefully. You have here a couple of sentences and everything, and what we'll end up doing is I would like you to write down where it says, vamos a hacer una actividad con las 6 oraciones. What I want you to do is for each bullet point, write down the sentences that are on página 6 for wants, on página 6 for impersonal expressions, and on página 7 for ojalá. What you should do after you've written these down is do your best to try and translate them, and we will go over them in class when we see each other. Gracias y hasta pronto. Ciao.